Hello, Ferdinand here. Welcome back to the Cinema 4D C++ SDK under macOS series. In this part, we're going to debug our project. So in the last videos, we generated a build system and then we built the SDK, and we have here the our build system folder and here the build output. So we have here, for example, the binary for the example assets module, and we are now going to debug this. So when we now switch to Xcode, the first thing we have to do to start debugging our project is select one of the plugin modules as the active scheme. It doesn't really matter which one you pick, you can debug all of them. So let's pick here this example assets module, and now we're going to edit the scheme, and as you can see, we do not have here debug executable set and also no debug argument set. We could set this up manually, but if you remember, when we generated the solution, we left this option here empty because there's a small bug on macOS with this, and but now since we have built our solution, we can set this option, and we're going to set here Cinema 4D executable as a debug application which matches our SDK. So this is the 25.2 SDK, so we need at least Cinema 4D 2025.2 version of Cinema 4D, which I'm picking here and setting there. And what we now have to do is we have to configure this once and then generate once. And as you can see, the icon for example assets already changed there. When we now go here into the settings of this scheme, we can see Cinema 4D set as the build target or the debug application, and we also have here the argument set for Cinema 4D, and what this argument will do, this G additional module path, is an argument of Cinema 4D, and it will we tell it that it should use here this path as an additional plugin path. So this path is exactly this folder, so the folder where we have compiled our plugins to. And that's pretty much all to do here. Now we can simply press here play, and the building succeeds right away because we didn't really change anything, and now Cinema 4D is booting. The first time this takes a little second. Okay, so now we're in Cinema 4D, and the first thing we can do or should do is check if our SDK appears here, and yes, all the SDK code examples are to be found here. And what we can also do is we can double check through, there are no plugins here in this plugin search path, but we still have plugins, and that's because of the debug configuration which we just set up in Xcode. It's important to note that you should not put here your SDK folder, for example, because then you will have a plugin collision, because Cinema will then try to load your plugins twice, and then the debugging can fail. What you now can do is explore a little bit the content of the SDK. I of course won't do this. And I will now switch back right to Xcode. And what we're now going to do is, let me make this a little bit smaller here. I will go into the example.main project, which contains the vast majority of our code examples. Go into here the source code folder and then go into the object folder and go here to the bottom to the rounded tube example, which contains here this method get virtual objects. And the rounded tube example is one of our object examples. And let's switch back to Cinema for a second. And right here, where's the rounded tube? There's the rounded tube. So this creates here some, as the name implies, rounded tube procedural geometry. And the get virtual objects method is the major payload method of this plugin type. Here the procedural geometry is being created, and we're now going to set a breakpoint here on this line. So we just click on this line number with a left mouse button. And when we now switch back to Cinema and now invoke this geometry being rebuilt by, for example, changing this parameter, this breakpoint will trigger, and we could now here step through this code and yeah, look here at the output values of things. Okay, so this is the, of course, most simple form of debugging. Now let's look at some a little bit more advanced techniques, or, well, advanced is probably the wrong word, a little bit more manual techniques. And let me also remove this breakpoint here because we don't really need this anymore. Okay, so what we're now going to do is paste in here this code. You will find this in the documentation. A little bit below where you probably found this video, and this, we're going to paste in here this code. And this code basically does the two major forms of yeah, manual debugging, and this is of course the good old just printing out things. These two calls are this, and then these two are manually or programmatically inducing a debug stop. And so application output is basically the print function of the Cinema 4D API, or printf. And this thing prints to the Cinema 4D console itself, which is found in Cinema 4D itself, but it will also print to the debug console of your IDE, and it will also print to the Maxon console, which is sort of an external console which you can attach when you are running Cinema 4D. And diagnostic output is sort of the debug print of Cinema 4D, of the Cinema 4D API, and this will only print to the debug console of your IDE and to the Maxon console, but not to the application console of Cinema 4D. There are also other print methods which are not really print methods. They are called, these are loggers, and these functions are sort of convenience functions to put messages into certain loggers, and there are many logger types. You can have a look at the debugging manual for more information about into which loggers you can log. You can also create your own loggers. And the second part here is about inducing manually debug stops, and there are two flavors of this again, which is a debug stop and a critical stop. And a debug stop will only trigger in debug versions of a binary. So when you have compiled your plugin as a debug binary, so if we go here into the configuration of our scheme, we can see example.main has been built with a debug configuration, and therefore this debug stop will trigger here. If you would have set this to release there, then this debug stop would never trigger. And you usually use them in the fashion that when some error condition is met, you raise your debug stop, and debug stops are usually used for things which are noteworthy but not truly critical. So when program has reached a state which you do not anticipate or something like this, then you raise the debug stop. And critical stops are, as the name implies, used for critical cases. So when really something went wrong and it seems unlikely that your application can run successfully further. And the difference is also between debug stops and critical stop is that a critical stop will also be raised when you are debugging a release version of your plugin binary. So there it doesn't really matter with which configuration you have compiled your plugin. Okay, so I've already done this here, but you have probably still here example assets selected as your scheme. You now have to select example main because we are here in the example main folder, and to recompile things we have to select the scheme. Could of course also just select all build, but for the all builds scheme, just under Windows there are no debug arguments set, so yeah, we always have to select the right project here under macOS. This is, or under Xcode, this is a little bit of a downside of Xcode, that you always have to select the right project which you're working on, but as a plugin developer that's probably not that important because you usually just have one module / project. So let me now click here play again, and you can see it's now building and it was successful, and Cinema 4D is now booting again. And we're now in Cinema again, and I'm going now to create a rounded tube again. When I now click this, this will now trigger immediately, because when I insert this object, the first thing Cinema 4D is of course trying to do is to build the cache, or in other words, the geometry of this object. So, oops, still add here this breakpoint, so which is actually probably not so bad. I could now press continue, or let's just do it. That's probably the quickest way. And you can see we now did halt here on this debug stop. And what we can also see is that these two print messages here, this application output, where I print the name of OP, and OP is the object for which we built the geometry. So it prints here C SDK rounded tube. And for the diagnostic output, I did do the same, but I also print the dirty flag. So here above we determine if we have to build the cache of the object, and if we don't, then we just get out. So, and if I now continue once more, then we land here on this other critical stop, and if I now press continue again, oops, let's continue, it's probably going to hold once more, or okay, no, it's not holding once more, and we are in Cinema back again. And if we go here now to extensions and open the console of Cinema 4D, we can see here the rounded tube output, but so the application output, but not the diagnostics output, which we just saw here under Xcode. Yeah, and that pretty much concludes debugging your plugins in Cinema 4D. So there are of course more techniques which you can use. Some of them are explained in our debugging manual, but this is the vast majority of them. I hope this helps. Happy coding and happy rendering, and I hope I see you in the last part.